You were working as a physiotherapist in the NHS before entering into politics.
I'm just the physiotherapist. I'm just the OT. Well, you don't hear the doctors and nurses saying, I'm just the doctor. I was angry about the lack of resources, lack of staffing, workforce being depleted. We need AHPs to be leading the new neighbourhood hubs.
You have made history as the Dudley's first female MP.
Come from hub upbringing. My mum and dad came from India. My dad came over by boat.
Welcome back to yet another episode on Priya Physio Podcast, where we shine light on brave, bold, and brilliant physios who are redefining leadership on their own terms because ceilings are meant to be broken. Hi, I'm Priya Shinde. I'm a physio leadership and career coach on a mission to help 100,000 physios pursue senior leadership and management with courage, clarity, and confidence. Today is special because today's guest and her journey will absolutely inspire you to take bigger and bolder steps. From the NHS frontline to the House of Commons, our guest today proves that your skills as a physio can take you beyond treatment rooms. She is a former physiotherapist, she is a member of parliament, and she is also the first female MP in her area's history. So join me to welcome Sonia Kumar, who is a member of parliament and a former NHS physiotherapist. Thank you so much, Sonia, for joining us on this Physio podcast, where we hope to inspire lots of physios to think outside the box and to think beyond clinical when it comes to leadership. Thank you so much, Sonia. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Priya. It's lovely to be on today, especially to support another physiotherapist. I'm really quite keen to dive in on our discussions.
Thank you so much. So, Sonia, let's begin with your journey. Let's start at the beginning. You were working as a physiotherapist in the NHS before entering into politics. What inspired you to take that leap?
It's a very good question. It's a question that I've been asked a number of times since being elected. So I was a junior physiotherapist at King's College in London. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there doing rotations. And prior to that, I was working at a hospital, which I won't name. Had 2 days of training. So I just graduated, had 2 days of on-call training. I was on call, so I was seeing paediatrics. I thought that was wrong. I thought, how is it that I've started a job and I have got very limited knowledge on pediatrics, never done it as a student, and I was then on call after a couple of shadowing sessions, and I was managing 2 wards as a junior physiotherapist, just graduated. So I assumed it was just the trust. The trust had financial difficulties, so I decided to move. So I went to King's, which was obviously a big teaching hospital. I learnt lots of things. I didn't want to do ITU, so I moved. So I'm sorry to my respiratory physiotherapist. That was my way of dodging respiratory, and I have immense amounts of you know, you know, trust in our respiratory physiotherapists, and I commend what they do, but I couldn't do it. I found it too emotional. It was quite hard to be seeing really critically ill patients and treating them, and then potentially them not making it, after treating them for, a couple of weeks. So it wasn't the type of job that I wanted to do. And, I found it just too emotional. So I then thought, right, Kings was saying I needed to go into ITU, and I said no, I didn't want to do it. So then I moved jobs and went for a promotion. And as a band 6 physio, I have got so many opportunities and training courses in that period of time, and I'm very grateful for my time in the NHS. But again, I think about a year in, I was the most senior person in the senior band 6 and 5. So I was managing students, I was managing basically staff. And it was really quite difficult. So I realised that no matter what, as I was moving to the trust and I was moving up the bands, and then I became, band 8A before I was 30, and that was my aim. I was like, right, I've done it. And I realised that services that I wanted to provide, all the sort of luxuries, and I do luxuries in sort of quotation marks, weren't there, for music therapy or art therapy or taking patients down to the gym. The last time you send somebody that's got a fragility fracture, or somebody that's been unwell on the care of the elderly ward, how many times do we ever take them down to the gym or do any rehabilitation? It just doesn't happen because we had so little time, and we're carrying normally multiple wards, even as a band 6 or a band 5. And I just, as much as my heart's always in the NHS and I will always be loyal to it, I just wanted more change and I want better services. And the only way you can make change is if you're the change maker and you're changing legislation and policy, so that, we've had the biggest budget since 2010, if you exclude the pandemic, now with the Labour government. And yeah, that's how I ended up. Is I was just angry. I was angry with the fact that I was working in services, not because of clinicians. Clinicians are fantastic. They have got the NHS at times is run on goodwill. People just doing the best that they can, working through lunches, getting in early, leaving late, because they care about their patients. But we need to be resourced, and that was my issue. So I was angry about the lack of resources, lack of staffing, workforce being depleted, and obviously pay, because that was always the one that's contentious. And I decided to decide to think about another career. And I was very lucky to have some mentors when I first joined. So I had no family or friends in politics. I had nobody that I knew. I had no I wasn't part of like the unions affiliated to Labour. I was self-made, and yeah, it was just hard work.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing such an incredible journey. What you've reminded us is that when it comes to your career journey, you don't always have to stay in the lane. If you want to see the change, you have to be the change. And that's exactly what you have proven with your career history. You wanted to bring a change. You decided, let me step outside and let me see what I can do. And I hope all the viewers who are watching us today are taking notes down, because these are golden nuggets that you don't often get to hear about somebody's personal journey, and how their anger and frustration could turn into something powerful, where you are sitting on the system, with the system, to have that change. Thank you for sharing all of that, Sonia. Now, looking back to your experience as a physiotherapist, just continuing that thread, how has your approach changed when you became a member of parliament? So, did you use any skills as a physio that you already had?
There's a ton of skills that we have: prioritization, communication, leadership, building relationships. It is endless. So anybody that is thinking about, moving sidewards or going into a new role, or trying to go into the charity, working for the CSP, working for the HCPC, or even just doing what I'm doing, is going to elected office. We need more frontline staff representing us on all levels of power, really, because otherwise you won't be making any change, and you can't influence something that you're not a part of. So if you're not a part of that institution, you're not a part of the HCPC, the CSP, or a part of the leadership structures in your hospital, you're not thinking about being a director, you're not thinking about becoming an elected office. I always say to people, don't complain if you don't want to be a part of that change, and be a part of that institution to make that change, because the skills that physiotherapists have are, like I said, endless, in terms of all the things that we learn working under high pressure, making decisions and making them quickly. This is all a part of my job that I've used. So there are all my skills that I learned in terms of my managing skills, leadership skills, having a vision. What do you want to see happen, and how do we get there to make that change? So if I want to make changes now with AHP, so I'm hoping to do an all-party group, an AHP group for APPGs, APPG of AHP, shall I say. And it's me. I'm trying to get a Tory. Somebody knows a Tory MP or Lord that'd like to join it. That'd be great, because it's cross-party. We need that. But again, that means we can then lobby ministers, talk about things that are really important to us. I've said already about, we need AHPs to be leading the new neighbourhood hubs. It can't just be GP-led. So I can't advocate if I wasn't in this position. So I would encourage anybody to consider looking at other avenues, and don't think that your skills are just only held into physio, and you can't push into other industries or other fields.
Thank you. That makes so much sense. So there's something really unique about how physios connect with people, and clearly, with all the skills that you've mentioned, we all have them. The only thing is, you have to recognize those as transferable skills and put it in your new role. So just implement those skills that you have when you get into the new role. Thank you so much for sharing that. You have made history as the Dudley's first female MP. What does that mean to you personally?
I feel extremely privileged, Priya. I am a very simple girl, come from humble bringing. My mum and dad came from India. My dad came over by boat. We had a shop. I lived on top of the greengrocers. I'm a greengrocer's daughter for 18 years. So I didn't have the luxuries of and the privilege really that I knew lots of people in politics. My father was in or my mother was in politics, or I had some connections with the unions. And it was never a path for me to even consider. And if a woman like me that can do it, any woman or any person that is thinking about going into elected office should also think the same thing. And it's a big responsibility, Priya. I've really got to be honest with you. It's a big responsibility being the first woman. So I want to make sure that the issues that never have been discussed before, whether it's incontinence, so I did a debate all about incontinence a couple of months ago, or whether it's about violence against women and girls, deep fakes, or domestic violence, or issues that affect women in my constituency are well represented. So how do I feel being the first woman of Dudley, being elected in Dudley? I feel proud, immensely proud. And I don't think that's ever going to be gone. I don't think that will ever lose its shine. And I understand the responsibility on my shoulders, and I carry that every day, 365 days a year. And I'm just proud, immensely proud.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Let me tell you, it's not only that you are proud of yourself, but we are all proud of you because you've actually brought the profession in a limelight and you've shown what a young physio can do. So you are empowering all the young women who are out there who think there is a ceiling that they can't break. And you often talk about breaking those ceilings. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what does that phrase mean to you? Breaking glass ceilings.
For me, it's sometimes those glass ceilings for women are in our minds, and we feel like we need to get we've not got enough training, we shouldn't go for the job yet, it's not the right time, oh, I can't juggle it, maybe there is always an excuse. And some of those glass ceilings aren't set by society or an institution, it's set by us. And I think the first thing I would say to anybody that is considering changing jobs or pushing themselves, or going into education or decide to do lecturing, whatever you want to do that you're thinking of changing right now, is to first of all have that belief in yourself. And you need to break that glass ceiling first, to say that when you say you can't, you can. And if anybody's listening to this that thinks that oh, I'm not sure, or on the fence about it, please look at my story and say, if I can do it, and I've broken many glass ceilings here for being the first woman, the first elected woman as an ethnic background that's been elected in Dudley, in the whole borough, as an MP. And it's, I do believe that representation does matter, but you've also got to make sure that with challenging institutions, we're challenging what the status quo is. And sometimes we're too worried or scared, or we're fearful of the consequences, or fearful of, oh, what if I don't do it, what if I can't do it, what if some it's I fail. But failure is a part of that journey of breaking glass ceilings. Like, I ran as a counsellor, so I lost in a couple of years ago, before I think it was 2 years before I was elected, so 2022. And I was told when I went for the election is, you're too young, you haven't been a part of the party long enough, you don't have enough experience, have you thought about other, going to be a councillor first, even though I knew I wanted to be an MP. And there's no disrespect to the councillors, I think they do a phenomenal job, but that's not what I wanted to do. But I had lots of advice from people saying, there's all these things they put in in my path. They said, oh, the fact that I was too young, and maybe you should consider. And the question that I got, which really frustrates me to even to this day, is, are you going to have children? Is this the right time for you in your life? Have you thought about that, about your home life? And I thought, how dare you tell me about my personal life, that I can make those choices and don't need advice on that. And it's unsolicited advice. So I think when breaking glass ceilings is first in your mind, and making sure that you feel that you are manifesting and you believe in yourself, because that's the biggest thing. And then you've got to challenge, because once you are feel assertive and you're ready to be able to take on any criticism, and you push forward, you challenge status quo. And then when you're challenging it, if you do get a failure, you get back up and you keep going again.
Thank you. I don't know if it still happens, but when women were interviewed for any posts, this was the question that they used to get asked in interviews. When are you getting married? And if
Yeah.
you're married, are you going to have any kids? What does that have to do with who you are? Interview me as a physio. Ask me physio questions, and if I fall short, then reject me. But if you ask me questions like these, you are biased, and I don't even want to work for your organization. You actually took me back in time. And Sonia, you said leadership. Leadership isn't a job title. Leadership is a mindset. And we often hear physios saying, "Oh, my plate is full, I can't do it." I can't do it is the word that I absolutely get annoyed with. Of course, you can do it. Because you can do it, you've got that opportunity. And that's what you've explained in your answer about breaking glass ceilings. That glass ceiling, which no one can see, only you can see, that's because it's a mindset. You will know what your mind is thinking, not anyone else. Absolutely powerful answer. Thank you so much. And I hope all the listeners, you understand that that glass ceiling is your own mindset, and you don't let others walk all over you. You choose what you want to do and you go for it, and have a spectacular failure. Have a spectacular failure. Let everyone notice you. And that's how you learn from it and you move on. Because once you faced it once, nothing else can stop you from going to where you want. Thank you, Sonia. Now, you've been quite vocal in Parliament, and we see you all over the social media, especially when it comes to the importance of physiotherapy, your advocacy about AHPs. Why is that such an important area for you? What are your personal experiences which makes you talk that passionately in front of the Parliament?
A lot of chat about doctors and nurses, and I'm a bit sick of it. I love my doctors and nurses. They're great, part of the MDT. They have their place. We AHPs carry a third of the NHS, a third. This is not a small number. I'm not talking about a niche number of professionals that are working, clinicians that are working in the NHS. I'm talking a big workforce that are generally in the shadows, generally don't shout about anything. They get on with their work, they sit down, they go to work every day, and they just are committed to the job. They don't, and they're not sort of ones that are going to start shouting on the rooftops about their success, because generally as a profession, that's we don't celebrate that sort of thing. We don't talk about how brilliant we are, and how we should be saying, yeah, I'm a physiotherapist, and oh, I'm a podiatrist or a speech and language therapist, and this is what I do. And the word that I hear again and again and again throughout my whole entire career in the NHS is, I'm just the physiotherapist, I'm just the OT. Well, you don't hear the doctors and nurses saying, I'm just the doctor.
Mm.
Have you ever heard someone say, I'm just the doctor? On MDT round, and I think, and I fell to that at times when I've said, oh, I'm just a physiotherapist. No, you're around the table, you're incredibly important, a part of someone's care. Majority of patients that come through the doors of healthcare will see one of us as professionals. So therefore we should be shouting on the rooftops about how brilliant we are and how important we are in that cycle. Because if we don't talk about the importance of AHPs, then at the end of the day, when it comes to funding or when it comes to any sort of new initiative, we won't ever be given that money. So for me, I definitely come in as a politician, as you now can hear, Priya, as I'm talking about money, because I want that to be the steady flow to be going into us as a professionals. But when people do pathways, how many times have we had tenders where they've decided to set up a service, and the surgeons and the nurses have set a service up, but what about the rehab, about these total hips and knees? They haven't thought about where these patients go. They just go on to another, then they go on to the normal flow of a waiting list of outpatients, and then it brings the waiting list, and then people are complaining that, oh, it's taking weeks to see physio. But you didn't, when you were tendering this, you didn't actually think about the rehab that was required and that pathway. And actually we needed to fund more physios as well. And you can't just fund a surgeon and a nurse and whatever, the people, but it was also the rehab that's missing. So for me, the next 4 years will be talking all about AHPs, and I've got, hopefully there are some debates that I'll be putting forward which are all about our care and what we contribute to the healthcare system. So yeah, everybody that wants to talk about it should be shouting and writing to their MPs and lobbying them for services and telling them to visit them, because if MPs don't know what you're doing, then they will not be able to represent you in Parliament. So all the physios, anyone listening to this podcast, please lobby MPs and tell them to come and visit their services.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I'm glad you said that and you used that statement, I'm just a physiotherapist. That annoys me equally. I have literally just been to an in-service training and the physio was trying to ask a question. Okay. And the physio starts with, oh, I'm just a physio. I'm not sure I can do that. I'm like, we are in an in-service training led by a physiotherapist. And the physio wants to ask a question and she wants to start with, I'm just a physio. I'm not sure if I can do this. If not you, who's going to do that physio specific training? If not you, who else is going to talk about you? So why don't we own spaces? And being involved in the CSP like for 10 plus years now, that is the one thing that I imbibed in my brain on day one of the conference that I attended, where Karen Middleton was the keynote speaker. And she said, I want to infect every single person in the room with my leadership skills. And I feel like was I the only physio in the room who's been infected and the infection is still ongoing for like 10 plus years? So physios, please listen. This is not just me saying, it is Sonia and the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy saying, you are not just a physio. You have to prepare your elevator pitch in such a way that you say, hi, I'm a physiotherapist. I am expert in your specialty, and then say what that specialty does to rehabilitation and the 10-year plan. Bring it into the bigger picture. That's how you showcase your value. And I'm equally with you with our doctors and nursing friends. But you know what? They have earned it over the years. It's not by luck that they are so confident and they are everywhere. So if you want to be successful, stop the victim vocabulary of they are strong, they do it to me. It is about who you are. What are you doing for yourself? So people like Sonia and trailblazers like Sonia are telling us you have to step up to talk about yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to talk about you. Thank you so much, Sonia. So shifting from healthcare to politics, it must have come with challenges. Okay. Um, some of the challenges you've already mentioned, but what were some of the key hurdles during the transition? How did you balance your work life, working as NHS physio, and then trying to get into politics at the same time?
So I was very lucky. The trust that I worked with were incredibly empathetic. So I took annual leave and some unpaid leave prior to the election. So I was selected quite late, which has its positives. So it meant that I was to be able to still work for a lot of the period of time. But then the negatives to that was not many people knew about me when I got selected, and then to run for the next 4 weeks, for the 5 weeks that I had, was absolutely a whirlwind of a time to try and get your press out, your social media, literature, door knocking, speaking to people, doing visits. It was just, everything was all sort of coming together. So I think. So I'll tell you the story. I got elected at 5 o'clock in the morning on the 5th of July. I'd never done press before, so I had cameras in my face going, "How do you feel? What do you think's happening? And what do you think's going? What's your vision?" And I was like, "Oh my God, what's this happening already? I don't know what to say to this." So I hadn't really done press. We had like really. Can you imagine that 5 weeks? I barely had like someone on the phone going, "Just say this. This is what you do. This is how, don't look at the camera. Look at the presenter." You get a few tips of what you should do, but at 5 o'clock in the morning and you've been up for now 24 hours, that sort of goes out the window. So I just sort of put together what I felt was happening. I thought and there was some lines that the Labour Party wanted me to say, but obviously that didn't get said because I was just too elated. And I got home, got into bed. I think I didn't sleep. I was just awake because my whole life was going to change. At 8 o'clock, I rang up work to say I'm no longer. I'm just not going to come into work. I think I'm getting sworn in. I don't know what the process is. My manager was really happy. She said, "Right, okay, we haven't had this before, so I'm not sure what we do about this. If we can just terminate your contract." She goes, "I need to get some advice and guidance." She then called him up an hour and a bit later, saying, "Putting your notice, and we've consented to say that your contract's now come to an end, and it's your last day of work." So I then spoke to Parliament, I think on Saturday. They said, "Oh, we'll give you accommodation." I said, "Do you need accommodation for Sunday?" I was like, "Yep," because I have no place in London. I don't know what's going on here. On Sunday, I went over to London. I picked up my laptop and some of my tech equipment. Monday morning, I started work in this new place that I had only gone to, I think, once before. I'd only gone to Parliament once.
Wow.
So the challenges were, I think, procedure. I didn't know, so you've got to, about like nod to the speaker when you come in. You've got when you want to speak, you've got to bob. So you've got to stand, sit down to get the eye of the speaker, and then they ask you a question. There's lots of stuff procedurally that I learned that was a bit of a challenge. And I think the challenge wasn't actually building my team, setting an office, getting all that stuff, because that was the part of physio. So this is what I mean. I used my physio skills of getting a team together, recruiting within 6 weeks, setting up my office. That was less of an issue. It was just actually Parliament and its procedure, I would say, was probably the biggest challenge, Priya. And speaking to all these people that clearly had been around the block a lot, well, someone like me had to come up to scratch to how things work and how to do speeches.
Wow. 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 You know what? You've said 5th of July, 2024. It's been literally just a year. We are in August. And you don't look like you were somebody who didn't know what you were doing at the Parliament. When you speak and when you're all over the social media, you look like you're somebody who's already been doing all of this for at least like 15, 20 years. That's how
You're
you
being
look like.
I think you're being very complimentary, Priya. I can tell you this now. My speeches were definitely rough around the edges when I first started speaking. It's very nerve-wracking, it's intense. It's a really quite small place, the chamber, when you speak. And you've got the obviously Tories and the opposition sitting, there that could, they'll do their remarks, they'll try and heckle you while you're speaking. So it definitely wasn't it wasn't an easy transition, but that's like at any jobs. Anyone that wants to do something new, go to a new job, yeah, I'm a swimmer than a sinker. So, I got on board quickly. But you take time to embed into a job. My best speech, I like to think, was my incontinence speech. But it took me, 11 months to get to the point where I could run in the chamber, and I led a debate. It was a backbench debate, so it was mine. And I started it up and then I closed it down. But yeah, it took 11 months. So it's like any
Wow.
job, it takes time, doesn't it, to learn the ins and outs and do speeches. And yeah, so
It does. And you know what? Now that you're talking about it, like the details about how you actually prepare for something, nowadays physios think, or anyone, they want quick wins. They want quick backdoor entry routes to being successful. But what they don't understand is the hard work that's required when you want to step up. So, as you said, when you had your first speech, you weren't even ready and you didn't even know how it looks like. So, it wasn't like you were expecting that you're going to win that election. All these press conferences where you talk confidently and you know exactly what to say. All the physios, If you're thinking that you're not good enough, please listen to this podcast, because you're hearing from a legend who is saying that you don't have to be prepared. You get into it and then you learn. And that's how your career journey is going to look like. When you first transition into your healthcare management role, or you get into academics for the first time, it is going to be difficult. Please do not revert thinking that I like my clinical, hence I'm coming back to clinical. Please ask yourself if you really gave it a chance before you think that you want to come back to what you were doing, because that's always happens. I've seen people who've gone into healthcare management and they've actually reverted to their clinical roles after 6 months or a year, saying, I just didn't like it. Of course, you're not going to like it. Listen to Sonia. And if you're somebody who wants to give up that quickly, please stay strong. And you know there's light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Sonia. I'm loving the way this conversation is going. So, do you think physios have what it takes to lead? If you have to name that one skill which your only physios would have, which will take you to that, to help you with the transition. One skill that physios will have.
Prioritization.
Perfect.
Prioritization. The job every day, I have very limited time. I've got meetings coming out my ears. Managing constituents, that the issues and concerns, doing surgeries, same thing as what you do, speaking to a patient. So I still do surgery, so I still speak to constituents, tell me what your problem is. I still do a subjective. I still go give them solutions and their treatment options and things they can go through. Same procedure. So and prioritizing your time is incredibly important, because you need to make time for things that mean the most to you. And in the job that I have, and this is Pat McFadden, so gave me this advice, as he's been very kind with giving me some time to speak to him about what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, as he's a neighbour, obviously two seats away from me. And he said, Sonia, he didn't say with physio, obviously. He said, Sonia, that you've got very limited time and you need to make sure you make the most of it, because it's invaluable. And, and that comes down to prioritization. So, yeah, that's what physios do every day. We sit down and we look at what we should do, who the patients need to be seen sooner, who needs to be sent for urgent imaging, how you manage your staff, so it's the same skills. And I think prioritization, and I'm going to be cheeky and say another one, but also be visionary. You need to, and I think, the physios I've worked with generally have a vision of what they want from a patient or from a service, or how they think things be better. And that's true leadership. If you can think, this is what I want to do, and this is how do we get to that path? And it's finding out those pathways. I think it's an exciting thing. Sometimes you go down a dead end and sometimes you don't. So yeah, I think I'm going to be cheeky and say prioritization, because I think it's really important, because you can't have time to think or reflect without having time for it. And then when you've got that time, you are thinking about being visionary.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you. So all the physios, Sonia has already said, but I want to reiterate this particular point. Your skills as a physiotherapist, when you prioritize on your ward, as a clinical navigator, or in your community services, that is the skill that will take you beyond what you think you are capable of. So please hold on tight to your skills and see how you can sharpen them. Thank you, Sonia, for adding that. Now, finally, what is the message that you want to give to that physio who's sitting on the fence right now, thinking, I don't think I have enough experience. I don't think I have enough UK experience, especially for the overseas qualified colleagues, with all the changes that we are listening to with the NHS 10-year plan, with the immigration changes, all of that. Physios are worried about their future. What do you want to leave them with? What is the message that you want to give them right now?
Anyone that's worried or concerned or feel like they can't do something, the first thing is you can. I'm standing as a person in an elected office where no one thought I could do this. No one thought that someone from, a greengrocer's daughter who has come from a very humble background, and a background where, my area now is one of the worst in Birmingham, and it's deteriorated, to now being an elected member and representing, so many constituents, and then part of a government and legislating on massive pieces, whether it's employment law or whether it's about how we're going to improve the NHS or what, the spending review. So that's the first thing I would say. And I think anyone that's not sure about where to go next is make a plan. So, sit down, go, okay, I need to get to X. How do I get to X? So if I want to be a lecturer, how do I get to being a lecturer? If I want to go into elected office or go into, I want to be, the director, the CEO of a trust. Okay, what tools do you have? Okay, networking is absolutely key. There's no way I'd be able to do this job if I wasn't networking. And Sharon Thompson, who's the deputy leader of Birmingham Council, she said to me, Sonia, on your launch, you wouldn't think that no one knew you. Your launch had over 50 people when I was launching my campaign to be the candidate for Dudley, and I was selected by the party because I had networked. So if you go to an event and you're not sure, you're not right, you need to have a hit list. Write down a hit list of 5 people that you need to speak to that could maybe give you some advice, some guidance, or be able to get you open a door for you to help you go forward. And I think you need to be true to yourself and what your values are. So I would say make a plan, true to yourself, network, and to get to that point, get yourself a mentor. I think it's so important to go to someone that has all the wisdom and is wise and has been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. And then the biggest is be perseverant. Don't, let's say, nothing in your whole path should ever make you think, I can't do it. Be perseverant, be determined, committed. And I think if you're not committed to doing, if you don't have the fire in your belly to make a change, don't expect no one else to do it. You have to go, I have this fire, I'm determined, no matter what happens, I've got to keep going forward. And I think that's a long-rooted answer there. I'm not sure what you're looking for, but hopefully that's helped somebody somewhere.
We got to exactly where I wanted what our physios wanted to hear. So physios, networking, okay? It is one word, but then you have no idea what it does to your career. Perseverance, being true to yourself. So these are all the things that you know. The problem is you don't know how to apply in your own life for your own career. So that's exactly what Sonia is getting at. Thank you, Sonia. I'm really humbled to have your side of story from you on my podcast, and to all the physios listening. Let this conversation be your nudge to think bigger, to act bolder, and to forge your own path. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe to Priya Physio, like and share with a colleague who you think needs to hear this. And remember, leadership isn't a title, it's a decision, it's a mindset. That's exactly what we have spoken in our 30 plus minutes podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for tuning into the Priya Physio podcast. And Sonia, thank you so much for sharing all these golden nuggets with us. Thank you.
So much, Priya, for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.